And the background to this this work is a call from Nordic ministers in 2008, where they wanted Stern-like analysis to be done for Nordic seas. Stern-like here referring to the Nicholas Stern report to the British Prime Minister in 2007 about costs and benefits of climate mitigation. So that is the background, and the research network has partners in all countries around the Baltic Sea. Kerstin and I, we come from the Baltic Stern Secretariat at Stockholm Resilience Center, Stockholm University. But there are also core coordinators in Finland and Denmark, and as you see, partners in all countries. And you have already heard that this Baltic Sea, it is unique with its cold, brackish water and its semi-enclosed character, which makes it very vulnerable to different kinds of pressures. And this picture illustrates from global drivers and climate and down to the different pressures. And in this work we have focused on eutrophication being one of the most serious problems and also quite difficult to cope with, as it is costly and as many of these sources are diffuse, agriculture standing for about half of the problem. We have also made a study on fishery management called Fish-Turn, and some case studies on invasive species and oil spills. But it's the eutrophication problem that we will talk mainly about today. And it's hopeful that we have the Baltic Sea Action Plan. So, but what will this plan deliver for the sea and benefits and for the people living around the sea? That was a question that we wanted to answer. What would the benefits be? What would the costs be? And for this we used, we also had to make scenarios to know what will the sea look like in the long term, because it takes time before it recovers after we have done the measures. So we made scenarios, and for this we worked together with natural scientists. So this is an example of how ecological and economic models could be combined to make a cost-benefit analysis. We also wanted to know what are the cost-effective measures and efficient policy instruments. So if we now start with the benefits, Kerstin.
Yes, to try and look at what the benefits would be of achieving the nutrient targets of the Baltic Sea Action Plan, we first made a study that was called Baltic Survey. This was a study of how people in all 9 countries around the Baltic Sea use the sea and what their perceptions are towards the sea. So it's a substantial survey with representative samples in all 9 countries around the Baltic Sea. And I will only give a snapshot of some of the main results, but it's a very interesting study. One of the main findings from the study is that about 80% of the people living around the Baltic Sea have spent leisure time at the sea. And what people most like to do when spending time at the sea is being at the beach. But other common activities are also to go swimming, fishing, going on boat excursions and cruises. But another very important finding from the study is that many people are worried about the environmental situation of the sea. I think the Finns were the most worried, but even in countries that were less worried, there was over a third of the respondents were worried. And people mentioned environmental problems like eutrophication, hazardous substances, marine litter, invasive species, and so on. But we know now that the Baltic Sea is important to people. Well, would they be willing to? How would they value improvements of water quality? And this is what we looked at in the subsequent study, called Baltic Sun, where we try to estimate then the value of an improvement in water quality. So we use the state-of-the-art economic valuation method to do this. And in the survey, people were asked what they would be willing to pay for an improvement in water quality. So, as Siv said, we developed scenarios, biophysical scenarios, to show how the state of the sea would look like in 40 years' time from now on. And we used 4 characteristics to show different levels of water quality. So how would the eutrophication state be? So there are 4 different indicators: water quality, frequency of algae blooms, fish species, states of underwater meadows, and bottom conditions. And we've got 5 different eutrophication levels, where blue is a very good situation and red not so good. So the 2 scenarios presented here, first is a baseline scenario. So in a business as usual scenario, if we don't take any further actions than we do today, how would the state of the sea then look like in 2050 from now? And compared to a state where the nutrient reduction targets of the Baltic Sea Action Plan would have been implemented. So to the left, you see then in a business as usual scenario, only Botnian Bay and Kattegat, the blue areas, would be in good conditions. And the Baltic proper especially would be in a very bad condition, with very turbid water, algae blooms perhaps every summer, and extended areas of oxygen, lack of oxygen in the bottoms. And then people were then asked how much they would be willing to pay to get this improvement, going from the left figure to the right figure. And when you aggregate the people's willingness to pay, you come to a figure between 3.6 to 4 billion euros annually. But the study also shows not only the values in monetary terms, but also other interesting results, such as that every second person have experienced eutrophication personally, and that people are on average willing to pay for an improvement. So what about the costs then? Let's see.
We used 2 models to estimate the costs, and that is of sensitivity. Made it possible to make some sensitivity tests. We were also looking at 2 cost estimates, one being the starting point country quotas according to the Baltic Sea Action Plan. But we also wanted to see what would happen with the costs if we started with the sea basin targets and allowed the measures to be allocated in different ways between the countries. What is also new in this study is that the natural scientists had good data on retention, and we were able to take account for that in the economic studies. We looked at 9 measures, and as you see here, this is the cost-effective combination starting from the basin sea projects. So this allows for more cost-effective allocation. And as you see, reduction of fertilizers takes a very big share, which is natural, as this is quite a cheap measure to begin with before it hurts the yields. And also wastewater treatment plants has quite a large share. It's also relatively cheap, while reduction of livestock like cattle, pigs and poultry are the most expensive measures, and that doesn't take such a big share. Other rather cheap measures don't have, for now, so large shares, like phosphorus ponds, catch crops, and the ban of phosphorus in detergents. Those were the 9 measures that we were able to include in this quite very large-scale model. So, what would the cost be? You know that the benefits were 3.6 billion per year, and the estimated costs, according to this modeling, lies in a range from 1.4 to 2.8 billion euros each year, depending on the model, depending on the allocation. And in the Copenhagen declaration after the ministerial meeting, HELCOM Ministerial Meeting, there were some changes in how the targets were, the allocation between countries. So we are now about to recalculate to take account of these new projects. And it seems like, it's not, calculations aren't finished yet, but it seems like this span would be reduced by €500 million each year. So it would be 1.4 to about 1.3. So these studies suggest that there are quite large welfare gains from fulfilling the Baltic Sea Action Plan in a span between 0.8 to 2.6 billion euros. And we have reason to believe that it might be even larger because the benefits are probably underestimated because we didn't take account of additional benefits in upstream lakes and rivers. And we also think that the costs are probably overestimated, as we were able to include only 9 measures, and there are quite a lot of measures out there, and many of those are cheaper than the most expensive ones that we were able to include in this model. So I guess the question this audience would have is what would the impacts be for the agricultural sector? Do we have anything to say about that?
Maybe a little bit disappointing, as the Baltic Stern was an analysis mainly focusing on evaluating the nutrient targets of the Baltic Sea Action Plan. So it was not the task to further analyze distributional effects. So, but this highly, and also there's 9 measures included. So what the effects would be on different sectors is highly dependent on what would the actual measures be and how would they be allocated. But ultimately, in the end, what the effects are on different sectors depends on how they're financed. There are many ways of financing measures and policy instruments to give the right incentives for measures to be implemented. We do have large subsidies. I say the correct number now, about 12.6 billion every year through CAP. You can also imagine taxes or trading system, and we have some suggestions in our report. The Baltic Stern analysis is the first large-scale international cost-benefit analysis that involves all 9 countries around the Baltic Sea. Our frameworks and methods that have been developed are relevant for evaluating international agreements such as the Baltic Sea Action Plan. In our main report, one important conclusion is that there's a call for ecosystem-based, holistic and integrated management strategies, and this might be extra important for Baltic Sea considering its vulnerability. It's clear from our studies that there is public awareness and support for action. The political frameworks are there. We have the Marine Strategy Framework Directive and the Baltic Sea Action Plan, and measures have been identified, but there seems to be a lack of enabling policy instruments. But maybe we can come up with some interesting ideas here today.
So if you want to know more about these studies, you could visit our website, www.stockholmresilience.org/Baltic-Stern. There are also 8 background reports there, and there are numerous scientific articles made by the researchers in the network.